Okay, good morning. So I was like, I'm gonna come on and just share my thoughts. I'm walking my kids. Okay, got the kids out today. Anyway, I was coming on because I wanted to share more about just spiritual things. Okay, so I was thinking today about persons who are of religious communities, and you get to a certain age, and you're so like nullified. And when I say nullified, I guess I'm saying numb. I want to say like numb, and you're so used to just this passivity, right? You're so high on the prosperity gospel that promises you miracles suddenly, that promises you blessings you didn't work for, promise you prosperity you didn't earn, you didn't toil for. And what I realized with a lot of these people, and the reason why so many of them become con artists in the church and so forth, is because they just don't know any better, right? So many of these people base, so much of what they desire in emotionalism, and there's really no practicality. There's no practicality to go about acquiring these blessings, and they're so focused on the outward appearance that they don't really understand the spiritual things of God. They don't understand the spiritual essence of God. So when they pray and God sends people in their lives to correct them, to, guide them, or to even just, heck, even God can't instruct them, right? So he got to send people, and they still don't heed to that instruction, But what I realized is so many of these people give so many of they give so much of their lives to Christianity. They give so much of their lives, not Christianity, I'm sorry, they give so much of their lives to religion that they look up and they have nothing to show for it, and so they start to feel entitled, and then they start to kind of prey on people in the church, and they become more opportunistic. It's like a survival type of thing, and this is more common than you know. You have to understand, if you're doing something for an extended period of time, but you're not putting in the work, and you're constantly being told that you deserve this, you're gonna be blessed with that, and you ain't toil for it. Well, after a while, you're gonna start taking things, because you're like, hey, I'm doing all the things. I'm sowing seeds. I'm giving my money. I'm giving my time, right? I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm not seeing the blessings, right? And so the reality is this too, like a lot of people who really kind of falter due to prosperity gospel are lazy. You're lazy. You're lazy. What we've normalized in today is, what we normalized into modern society is being a hater. So many people are haters, You're a hater because they got what you don't got, but you ain't willing to work for it. You're not willing to work for it. We live in an Instagram sensationalized culture, okay? And so it's like everything people see is like, how did they get this? How did they go about acquiring that, right? Nobody has a job, but everybody's rich, people out here selling, Alibaba tank tops, and they pulling up in Rolls Royce. So, so many people can't track the cause and effect. There is no, timeline. There's no story. There's no testimony to say, oh, wow, this is how this person living. This is how they got it, because most people aren't honest, right? And so you have a lot of people who are deceived, and people are becoming more and more entitled. And when that shows up in the church, that absolutely looks like, preying on the congregation. So people are desiring lifestyles they're not willing to work for, Christian or not. Okay. At the end of the day, God cannot bless what you didn't toil for. Now, he can take your little and he can bless that. He can make it something. He can make it more than what you could have ever thought of or imagined. Okay. Ephesians 3 verse 20. All right. But at the end of the day, God can't bless what you didn't work for. And so many of y'all are lazy. Do you know how much work you have to put in to go about really being able to afford certain material luxuries? Do you know how long you have to toil to really be able to live a life of like prestige and comfort? You know what I mean? Do you know just the not so glamorous aspects that you're gonna have to go the not so glamorous seasons, repetitively, continually. that you're gonna have to go through to get to that point in your life where you're respected in your career, you can afford certain things. Like, most people aren't willing to do that, and that's exactly why you'll have people who will be in position and they're nasty, they don't have the character, because the devil will bless you before you're ready to receive it. Okay, that's why he'll give you a bunch of money at 23. You're dumb. You're young and dumb. And so you have to understand, like, God can't bless what you didn't work for. That's the message today. God can't bless what you didn't work for. You got people who get up in marriages. You can't, yeah, this might be your spouse. Yeah, this person, all right, y'all might be able to make it work. But at the end of the day, it's like, you got to put in the work to build something beautiful. We got two different people. We got to chisel away some things here. We got some hard edges over here. We got some round edges over here. Like, that takes work to chisel away and create a masterpiece. And the reality is that people today are lazy. It don't matter the age. It don't matter the gender. People are lazy today, okay? We are lazy. We are lazy people, okay? People want to get online and argue with those who do the work of reading and, are in the field of academia, but guess what? They ain't willing to read a book. They're not willing to read a book. They're not willing to sit and listen to a podcast. They're not willing to go sit in a classroom and take courses. No, but guess what? They want to get on here and they want to have an opinion. They want to have an opinion. They want to argue you down. It ain't right. It ain't right. We're lazy. We're lazy. We're entitled. We don't want to work for anything, okay? And we've just become a culture that is just obsessed with instant gratification and, unrealistic desires. And you're bitter and you're a hater because you're not willing to work for the next thing. And it's just like, hey, listen, these things take time. So that's my message today. Stop using Christ to justify your misery, okay? To justify a life of dissatisfaction, okay? And just acknowledge the fact that you're lazy. You're not willing to work for that, okay? And, either settle with your lot or saddle up, okay? Saddle up and put in the work. You guys have a great day.